talk to us about Black Lives Matter. 'Cause now that you've brought that up.
Well, okay, and see, here's the difficulty with that.
Right.
Is that I don't like the concept of black because of the connotation of color, because of the things at which it can be used to as a negative towards a people.
Mm-hmm.
But I am also an individual of multiple nationalities. So I
like to think of Carl as the melting pot.
The melting pot of America.
It's one of those. So, you know, I am grateful to
He's
have
a Heinz 50
a few. I've been called like many times too, because it is, right? So if I give you an understanding, so me, I have my father is African American and Cherokee. My mother is Spanish, Mexican, and Irish or Scottish. One of those two, we found out that we are, right? So I have the sloth of like basic, just, you know, Americanized, you know, forefront, so to speak. I mean, that's not to talk. That's not to mention, you know, the Chinese community, the Asian community that came in, the Irish, the Italian community that came in, all, you know, the Jewish community, everybody else. I have my own little pocket that I am, but I have always found it. Even with my African American community, because I am not complete African American, I don't fit in.
Right.
Because I am not Caucasian.
Because you're not black enough.
I don't fit in. Because I am something that they can't relate to, because I either look like their perceived enemy, or I don't know enough about them. I remember having. When I was growing up as a kid, skateboarding. I skateboarded, I mountain biked, I climbed, I did all these things. Mm-hmm. I had a bunch of Caucasian friends that were like, man, you're the whitest black person I've ever met.
Right.
I had people that used to call, my nickname was Wig Nig. Mm. You know what I mean? Right. Right. Like these things that that another culture would use to identify me as, because they didn't understand.
Right.
I also didn't understand who I was either.
Well, and this is why as a culture we need to get away from, in my opinion, these models of, you know,
just saying white and black is polarizing.
Yes.
Right, like, you know, it's not
like
it's not that Black Lives Matter or that White Lives Matter. It's that every individual on this planet is a sovereign child of the universe.
Yes.
And they matter simply because that's who they are. That's the individual. That's the holographic representation of the universe that has decided to become one with that particular individual. And because of that, their life matters. And it just, for me, the Black Lives Matters, it bothers me, and that, you know, because every life matters, and I understand that racism does exist, and I do also understand that for whatever reason, the black community tends to get targeted more by police abuse than the white community. But the issue for me is, you know, I think if we could correct some of these other systemic issues, that would kind of go away, because you'd have a more enlightened cop in the first place. Mm-hmm. But to me, it also creates division, because when I disagree with that, then I'm being told, oh, check your privilege. It's like,
oh my God.
Well,
I don't like that concept, because well, I'll let you answer. But if I'm, it's not a privilege for me to have rights. It's not a privilege for me to be a sovereign, autonomous individual. Right. If some segments of society are not having their rights respected, then it's not a problem of me having privilege. It's a problem of their rights being violated.
Right, because the same privileges you have should be the same privileges
absolutely
everybody has.
Right. So the whole concept.
And that's part of why I don't like the word privilege at all.
Right.
Because you're actually reinforcing that there is a privilege that you don't want to exist. Like,
as if And so the reason the Black Lives Matter movement starts, and the reason why it is because, as it's been, at least in America, we have seen mostly, not just blacks, but Black lives, but like let's not forget the Native Americans. Let's not forget these folks.
I would say in South Dakota, Native Americans get more.
The Black Lives Matter concept is based off of just black people being for the most part, disenfranchised in the United States. Not just because of the color of their skin, not just because of slavery, but let's go back as far as the blues, music. Let's go as far back, even we can go to hip-hop. How hip-hop came up as a black movement for the individuals to find themselves, and then was taken over. I apologize, Jewish community, for those who had Jewish friends who ended up buying out most of the hip-hop artists and turning gangster rap into a prolific, nonsensory, just nonsense. I was trying to call it something. Didn't have another word. But, you know what I mean? Like, we're talking about a community of people who were just pillaged and pilfered for everything that they had and everything that they were trying to contribute to America. And now it's looked at like, well, you know. So yes, I understand, again, being multicultural. Like, I grew up with Caucasians, and I grew up with Hispanics, I grew up with everybody. So I understand, like, foundationally, this word privilege needs to disappear, because when what most people mean when they say the word privilege is privilege of those who have more than they need and share none of their abundance. That's the privilege, and unfortunately it's trickled down, and now it's like a shotgun blast to every Caucasian person, which is frustrating, because that's not the case. Every...
We have to be careful that we're not, judging anybody by their color of their skin. You know, not just black people. Sarah makes a really a good point, and I've heard this before. Thank you, Sarah. That's exactly why the Black Lives... I think she's responding to my comment. That's exactly why the Black Lives Matter movement started, though. It wasn't to discredit any other race or ethnicity. It was to bring awareness to the unfortunate events that black people have endured. And I do understand that, because it's like if you have... Let's just say my house is burning down. Right? If I say that my house matters, right? It's not because your house doesn't.
Right.
It's because my house is the one that's in trouble.
It needs help.
Right. So so I do get that. So
but I do also
Sarah.
want to call something out, because I was talking with a black woman from Colorado yesterday. I was on the phone with her, and one of the things that she mentioned to me is that she actually tried to start. She reached out to put together a Black Lives Matter movement event in her town, and she wanted it to be a thing where police and the black people got to come together. And when the Black Lives Matter movement found out that the police were going to be present, they actually backed out of the event, because they told her that it wasn't, I can't remember exactly how she said it, it wasn't their responsibility or their job to reconcile with the cops.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Like, they backed out of the event that she was putting together because the cops were going to be there. And she was trying to make it a peaceful exchange that helped reconcile the divide through the Black Lives Matter movement. But the Black Lives Matter movement people backed out because it wasn't their job, it wasn't their responsibility to reconcile with the cops. So some of the things about the way the actual, I believe in what they're trying to accomplish in ending racism and calling out police brutality. I believe in how people personally connect to the concept. But the actual organization, I feel like that's a struggle for me to think that they don't actually have a goal of reconciliation. What is your goal?
Right. And one group's goal might not reflect another group's goal.
This is the organization everybody's latching onto right now.
Right.
So if you're going to jump on their bandwagon, then you need to know what they stand for.
Right, but are you talking about just the organization in Colorado or it as an entirety?
Yeah, because every Black
when
Lives
she reached
movement.
out to the Black Lives Matter organizers, that's what she told me. I mean, I don't know all the details.
Yes,
Right.
no, that's good.
What city was this in?
I don't remember what city. It's just,
Okay.
I know she lives in Colorado.
Okay, so someplace in Colorado. Because this is one thing that's true everywhere with every organization. I know back when the Tea Party movement was popular, some of those Tea Party movements were basically Republican Party, fronts. Some of them were actually libertarian organizations. Some of them were actually so like every local group actually had their own different belief systems and whatnot. And so when you paint them all with the same brush, that makes it difficult too. So that's an interesting concept.
So I have something that I want to bring up, and I know it's going to be an incredibly challenging thing to express. So please bear with me. But if I want to see racism end. I am I'm a Christian humanist, for lack of better words.
Right.
I still believe in God and accepting Christ, but I'm about as humanist as that comes.
Right.
And I believe that we are supposed to love each other with brotherly love. And, so I'm not going to say colorblind because I see that we are all equal and we are all special. There is a reason that you are different than me, and it's valuable and it holds purpose, and I'm okay with that.
Right.
I love that. I appreciate that.
That's what makes it
So, at the end of the day, I feel like the issue of racism that we are talking about right now is what we really want to end. But that is always and forever going to be a heart and mind matter. It is not something we can make laws to end. That's only swatting the wrist of somebody who breaks a rule. That's not actually changing hearts and minds that are feeling and expressing hate. So
and fear.
It is absolutely 100% a heart and mind issue. And if we want to end racism, then we all have to be able to find a way to understand each other. And one of the most frustrating things that I've been seeing in all of the exchange on social media is insisting that if you are not Black, you cannot understand. Because, okay, let me explain this real quick. Because I may not be Black, but I do need to find a way in myself to empathize with your situation.
Sure.
I will not have an exact same experience as you because I am not Black. But what I can do is dig through my life and say, okay, as a woman, for example, I have experienced domestic violence, sexual assault. I have been harassed. I will get paid less. The sexism movement is really not all that far in history different from the racism movement in the sense that women were also treated like property. I mean, it's not going to be the same. It's never going to be the same exact thing. And especially as a woman in ministry, even people within the Christian community will attack me. I have personally received death threats for being a female leader in ministry. Not from like people locally, but outside of here. So to me, I have experienced situations where somebody looks at me, forms a judgment, and feels hate, anger, a desire to hurt me, feels that they have power over me. There has been a long history of it. And so that is my connection point to empathize. That is how I understand that the pain that I feel like that must be something similar to what you experience in your position. Like I said, it is not the same, and I'm not going to call it the same. But if I am told that I can't understand, then I'm never going to try and form the empathizing thing. And if we can't empathize, we won't form bonds of love, which means we won't be motivated to change ourselves and our situations. And, so we have to find ways to understand. And so it is very, very frustrating to me when somebody tries to tell me I can't understand. Because I have my own personal experiences. And then it just turns around to, no matter how it is looked at right now, people are so angry and the situation is so polarized at this point that even though I am not racist, even though I am actively supporting the end of racism, I wrote about it in my book, I do everything that I can to fight this mentality, even before it was a hot button issue. I'm still being looked at as and immediately
Right.
called a racist.
I
So
actually
I'm very frustrated
yeah.
with that situation because I try to support your community and I still get attacked for it.
yeah, and I actually
I'm not mad at you.
No,
Sorry. I'm
you
just
know,
very
I
frustrated about the
understand.
situation.
yeah, and for me the other one of the things that I think about is no, I'm not black, but I do know how to reason logically. I am a human being. To me, such statements are racist. It's like you can't understand me because you're white.
Right.
It's like how is that not racism in a different light? You know, and you're right. Like our goal needs to be one of mutual understanding, right? Working towards understanding. And there was actually a really beautiful. I think this was in was it Kansas? But instead of having a protest, the people that were getting together to protest the killing or the murder, they actually decided to have a picnic with the cops. Right. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, get together. Let's actually find out who each other are. Let's see each other as human beings.
Break bread.
Let's break bread.
Yes.
Yeah, so that we can right, learn to love each other. Yeah.
If
So you have a lot you want to say.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna let you say it.
no, so I understand at least I understand where you're coming from, and I can't say that I don't because I've grown up around those who don't look like me, who even though they don't look like me, still were able to have my best interest in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was what allowed me to know that there are still people who may not look like me, have gone through the same things struggle-wise, but still are there to support me because who I am as a person.
Right.
You also have to remember that a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement figureheads, leaders, those who are the movers and shakers of this organization have probably had to deal with systemic racism their entire life. So they have dealt with the lack of empathy from Caucasians at some point.
So
in
it's
their
like
life.
a fear, or it's like a
Yeah.
I've not been able to understand in the past, and so therefore I'm not going to be able to understand in the
Yes.
present, and so they've got some active memories, so to speak, and emotional storage things that they could potentially work through.
They still have to shake their demons.
Right.
And
Exactly.
that's been the hardest thing that I know that I've had to go through because again, being somebody who doesn't really identify with anybody, I had to learn. And Nikki, I just realized you were on this, and so she was one of my best friends in high school. I'm still a great friend. Anyway, we still communicate as often as we can. But she was in the same class as I was.
I'll actually read what she wrote here.
Please.
Skin. So the Nicolette Grace.
Yep.
I'm assuming. Yeah.
Yep.
Skin color should never be an issue. We all bleed red. We all feel pain. We all feel love. Sadly, in the world we live in today, media has chosen. I'm actually going to make a comment on that when you get done. To place a heavy division on race. Generations have been raised and continue to raise such hateful and hurtful mindsets.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, and she's brilliant. Like I've had some amazing conversations with that woman alone when I was younger, right? But in high school, I was the guy that went to every different table in lunch. You know what I mean? Like I didn't feel comfortable just sitting down with one group of people because I was a part of every group of people.
Right.
Right?
Awesome.
So, but most people don't know this. So what I wanted, leading into that, I wanted to read this. This is from Jerry Mateus. He is a mentor that I have grown to appreciate so much when I was in Vegas. He was somebody who definitely had lots of words of wisdom, and another brother who was, who himself had come through a lot of struggle himself. But he wrote this post, and it was, "To my black brothers and sisters, when your white friends ask you, what can I do? Help hold the mirror to their blind spots and or give them a seat on the bus next to you. Don't send them on their way to take a hike. They're willing to stand, sit with us, and walk alongside us. when they say, we're in this together, they may not feel how and what we feel. Let them hold our hand, lock elbows, and walk on together. Embrace them all, even if and when we don't look alike. That's the point, isn't it? I had to quote that because, right.
Well, right, like we're trying to offer love, right? But you have to be able to receive it and recognize it for what it is.
And I totally 100% understand that experience can make it hard to trust, to feel open to receiving something.
Because we all get that way. We all have wounds, and so we create these barriers to protect ourselves.
And when I tell you I care about you, it's just words until you experience it. And sometimes people aren't prepared to allow that because they're also opening the door that I could have
to get hurt again.
Yeah, that I could have not meant what I said. And I get that. I totally get that. Like, it's hard because I seriously am about as
it's hard for
genuinely authentic as I possibly can be. But the experience people have with other people gets in the way of people being able to accept.
It's hard for somebody to accept something they haven't experienced. It's hard for it's because like being loved, like you. So when I was here and the conversation you and I had about being at a place where I am loved and I am cared for, in a place where I can be and accepted of, that was new to me because I'd never seen that outside of my own family.
Right.
And I mean, I had in pockets. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have family, friends that aren't family in Vegas and other places. Like I have that, but it was very few and far between. Even friends that I called friends in my hometown were not the kind of friends that I have come to understand here. I have a handful of friends out there, but like to be able to experience what that's like, what that means, that changed.
It's hard. And it takes time. And it takes work. It takes work to love people and to open yourself up to be loved.
It's so much work.
Yes,
it really
does.
I mean, if people even know what the word means. So
I
don't
would
get
say
started
this:
that.
if the Black Lives Movement is looking to make a headway, it needs to start integrating itself with everybody.
And I feel like part of that starts with shifts in terminology. It's like, okay, so for example, saying white versus black polarizes. It puts you in an us versus them mentality because you're saying you're either on one side of the fence or the other side of the fence. Even if I'm going to tear the fence down to hug you.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter. There's people who are just so used to this polarizing terminology that that's all that they can see because that's what we're being taught. Words like privilege. Again, when you say privilege, you are placing somebody in an elevated status that you don't want them to be in. When you hear words like I don't understand or you can't understand, you are putting up a wall that says you will not be capable or allowed to empathize with me. So I feel like if we choose different terminology, we can shift hearts and minds in a new way. And that's,
Words
I
of compassion. If we started using words that were compassionate, that were inclusive, that were open to not just question, but just open to the possibility, open to potential.
Well, the words that you say, so this comes from my training, the words that you say really do program your mind. And so, like for example, when I was in like the training that I used to do, we talk about like people always wanting to lose weight, right? Well, when you were a little child and you lost something, what was the first thing you had to do? You had to go find it again, right? So we don't want people to lose weight. Right. If it's we want them to let it go or get rid of it, or So if we can, it takes a little bit of thinking, but we can do a little bit of mental house cleaning with the types of words that we use.
Yeah.
And instead of telling somebody, you can't understand me, so I don't want you to try, sort of, and that's not what they mean, I don't think, but sometimes it is, because they're just angry.
Perhaps they just don't know how to express it.
Right. So like, I want you to be able to understand me, if we could try to just kind of tweak our language just a little bit, it wouldn't take that much.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get into another very difficult aspect of what's going on, because I see a lot of people fighting about it on social media. And ultimately, that means it needs to be talked about. Whether you agree or disagree,
Right.
We're going to talk about it.
We're going to rip the band-aid
talk
and have
about
a
it.
conversation, even if it bleeds. Okay, so, but we're all going to bleed red, so there's that. Question, answer, no. So,
None of us are Vulcans, I don't think.
No.
so, all lives matter. I'm going to just rip the band-aid. That has been a really challenging thing. So, for starters, I have seen Black people make posts that say, all lives matter. And they get amens and hallelujahs and everybody encouraging and supporting that they said it. If anyone who is white says all lives matter,
They get attacked.
they are immediately attacked and told they are whitewashing it. So I don't feel like it's okay to decide who is able to say what on that subject. Because at the end of the day, if all lives don't matter, then what makes Black lives more important?
In moments like that, I just tell people stop reading the comments. But no, because, you know what I mean? Like, if you are willing to say all lives matter, you are, like, I get it. If you want to say Black lives matter, okay. If
They
we're,
do.
Right, and they do. But, like, if we're not, like, to understand why this is what it is, like, the fact that Black Lives Matter hashtag had to be created is in the expression of what we've been struggling with.
Right.
So yes, I'm a complete agreement that at some point now we have to make the transition into all lives matter, so that we can now take everybody who is on our side, everyone.
Yeah.
We can all then join arms and be like, hey, you're not messing with any of us anymore.
Right.
And you know, it's interesting because, and again, people get yelled at for bringing up other things right now. I'm not trying to make it about anything else. I'm very much focused on the issue at hand. But the reality of solving the actual problem, we have not actually looked at what peace really looks like and what it takes for a long time. It's always war. We always turn to violence. And like MLK, he was peaceful and he actually made progress.
Right.
You know, so when we're talking about the concept of Black Lives Matter, let's take a second, say, yes, this is true, but let's also look at immigrants whose children are in cages right now.
Yeah.
Let's look at Asians who are now being, I've been reading a lot of articles about Asian Americans who are being persecuted because people blame them for COVID being here. They're just looking at them and saying, you're the reason this is here. And they are being harassed and persecuted. Let's look at anybody who is Islamic, and they are immediately viewed as being a terrorist, even if they are not.
Or actually, people that practice the Sikh and those other types of more Persian religions are being kind of thrown in as well.
Let's look at, again, women who constantly face persecution. So if you were to actually just step back and say, yes, Black Lives Matter, and so do these, and so do these, and so do these, and to just, if you were to just link arms with all of the people who are feeling experiences of injustice right now, you'd have a kumbaya moment where everybody in the country is linking arms on their own experience of injustice. They are not the same. They come from different places, in different forms, in different ways. They are not comparable. And I'm really sad to keep seeing people try to compare them to make one worse than the other, because all injustice is injustice.
Well, and if you're...
I mean, death is the worst injustice. I'm not going to say it's not.
Well, and that's actually an interesting thing, too, is if... that's not a mentally healthy thing to do, to be like, my injustice is worse than yours. You know, we don't want to get into, as a culture, we don't want to get into a mindset of who's the bigger victim, because that's not healthy. It's not healthy for anybody. And you know, because I could just easily say, and this is probably going to be, you know, a little controversial, but you know, if I'm looked at and somebody looks at me and says that I'm a white male, just assumes I become a white male, you know, I have certain prejudices, you know, that's just as racist in my opinion, and that's just as unjust. So we all have wounds. We all have ways that we've been treated unjustly, and it's a raising of consciousness in general, so that people can. This is my view, and I guess this is more my libertarian instinct, but. As a culture, as a society, as a planet, if we can raise our awareness to stop seeing these things as defining characteristics of the person and start seeing people as individuals,
and personal responsibility,
then that would go a long way. Let's see.
Tay, I completely agree with you. And you coming up,
What did she
my
say?
sister, she was talking about minorities. But she had mentioned that the ones who say no one understands are just filled with anger. Which, the point being that,
So how do we help heal that?
Well, and here's the thing. Like, the fundamental issue we have in America is self-reflection. Let's be real. It started with our hostile takeover of America from the Native Americans. We have yet to give them reconciliation for that. You know what I mean? But like
they get this small subsection,
right?
And we're gonna build a pipeline.
Like
through it,
we haven't given true respect to the people who helped create and found the foundation of this place, and we haven't given true respect to the notion that we need to reflect on our own self, like. If
the way to heal the planet is to heal yourself.
Yes. Like, how can we raise consciousness if everything we see on reality TV, on the movies and sitcoms and shows that they're producing, don't encourage self-reflection, or don't every reality TV show I've ever watched just encourages dog eat dog and swindling and being scandalous.
That's the whole point of reality TV. Yep. And it's like that's the opposite of reality. Like am I here trying to swindle you, Anne?
No. Taylor was trying to read your comments over his shoulder, and you're very on point. Thank you.
Yeah,
she's smart.
Right, and on some level, it is the individual's responsibility.
She's your sister.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's the thing. Like if and that's what I can say I'm most grateful from is, a lot of the things that I went through. Megan is a testament to that. I told her that I had to come to terms with my trauma. I had to come to appreciate my trauma. If I didn't, I could have been a completely different person. I don't know what that looks like.
Right.
And I'm grateful for that, because I can look and say, you know what? Even though I had my shortcomings, even though I had my horrible decisions, even though I've made bad choices in my life, none of them could compare to the potential choices I could have made had I not come to terms with me and the things I had to go through. Because that's what saved my life.
And then by healing yourself, you're now in a better place to help heal other people from their traumas.
And we're able to have great conversations like this.
Right.
I'm able to talk and be approachable to people. To most people are tripped out when they're with me and they walk around with me and they see like the people that I run into. We've had these conversations. Like, you've seen some of that. Like, it's just because that's just where I found myself. Is I am at a point where anyone can come and talk to me and we can sit and have a conversation, and I am able to at least be open and hear the person out. And most of the time, that's all the person wants.
Right.
Yeah.
We're all just, at our core, we're all just little 5-year-olds that just want to be heard.
Yeah. And I have to say, that is a lot. So many people right now don't feel heard, and that's where a lot of the fights are happening. I mean, I'm seeing lots of people where somebody says something, especially in written words on social media. Please have these conversations in person or on the phone or somewhere that is more than just written words, because you are asking for a fight if you don't. So just communication 101 in the modern world. You need to talk in face-to-face.
I will say I understand that the Black Lives Matters movement started because we were not being heard. Okay? I'm saying that to those who are listening who are also of darker skin. Like, I get it. We weren't being heard. We needed a way to be heard. The Black Lives Matter movement was that.
I agree and I support that. Just putting that out.
And you're right. And that's the thing. Like, but at some point now, with what this is, with who we have now brought on board, the people who are there supporting us, the people who are there on our side, on our corner, fighting with us in the ring.
It's time to move on to a healthier,
right? It's time
even
to
better
organize it properly. Let's stop creating the separation. Let us bring ourselves together. This is the best opportunity. I thought COVID was going to do this, but apparently this had to happen. You know what I mean? Like, I thought like the whole pandemic thing was going to be what did it, and then this happened, and now it's like, okay, now we've got everybody.
One of the Bible verses that keeps popping through my head is, in the Old Testament, when Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers, right?
Damn.
And at the
Ain't that something?
yeah, and by his actual brothers, yeah, and he ran into them later after he had basically made something of himself in Egypt, and his brothers were scared of him because they thought he was going to retaliate. But he said, you meant it for evil, but God used it for good. And I know that's what's happening right now. Like in Sioux Falls Sunday night, that the city had a healing moment as a whole that night, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.